What if the whole story you've heard since childhood was incomplete? What if the crucifixion of Jesus wasn't the end point, but humanity's blind spot? For centuries, we've repeated the narrative like a mantra: Jesus died on the cross. But there's a silent crack in the story, an interval that no one explains, a set of hidden, erased, ignored, or simply avoided details. This video isn't meant to deny faith. On the contrary, it's meant to provoke awareness, awaken vision, and reveal clues that have always been there in plain sight, but that no one dared to connect. Prepare yourself. What you're about to hear may change everything you believe about the crucifixion and about Jesus' own destiny. Historically, death by crucifixion was slow, cruel, and prolonged. Condemned individuals could agonize for 24, 48, 72 hours, or even longer. The very method of execution had been created by the Romans to maximize suffering, transforming each breath into an agonizing battle against one's own physiology. The chest muscles would spasm, the lungs would gradually lose their ability to expand, and the entire body would wage a losing war against gravity and exhaustion. It was a death designed to be seen, to serve as an example, to terrify. But the official narrative tells us that Jesus remained on the cross for only a few hours. 6 hours to be more precise. He was crucified in the morning, around the 3rd hour according to the Jewish reckoning, and was already declared dead before sunset. 6 hours. When the historical average, documented by the Romans themselves, pointed to entire days of agony. Why so little time? How could someone exhausted, wounded, scourged, and dehydrated die so quickly? The medical and historical logic simply doesn't add up. Modern medical records have analyzed the crucifixion process and concluded that death did not occur from immediate wounds, but from gradual asphyxiation combined with severe dehydration, hypovolemic shock, and extreme muscle fatigue. The body literally surrendered to the inability to breathe. This took time, a lot of time. So why would Jesus have died so quickly? This accelerated time is the first key that raises an uncomfortable question. Did he really die there? Or was something entirely different happening before everyone's eyes, but no one noticed, or no one wanted to tell? Have you ever stopped to think about this? Let us know in the comments if this reflection resonates with you. And if you're enjoying it so far, leave a like now. It helps more people discover this truth. One of the most curious and least explained moments of the scene is the offering of a liquid substance while Jesus was on the cross. Many believe it was common vinegar, that cheap, sour wine that Roman soldiers carried for their own consumption. Just any drink, of no great importance. But ancient texts, including apocryphal manuscripts and medical writings of the time, mention specific mixtures used in execution contexts, compounds containing herbs, myrrh, aloes, and other substances known to anesthetize, slow breathing, and reduce the perception of pain. These mixtures were not given to kill. On the contrary, they allowed the person to remain conscious and alive longer, reducing the possibility of sudden shock or premature cardiac arrest. It was a way of prolonging suffering, in keeping with Roman cruelty. But it could also be used in another way, to discreetly preserve life, to simulate a state of deep unconsciousness without actual death. This detail is always recounted as something trivial, almost folkloric. But think about it. Why would anyone offer this to Jesus if the Roman Empire's objective was to kill him quickly and end that embarrassing episode? Why give something that could alleviate suffering or alter his state of consciousness? What if this substance had the opposite effect to what we've been told, preserving life, inducing a cataleptic state, and not taking it? What if at that moment, someone close by, infiltrated among the soldiers or followers, was actually trying to save him? The narrative ignores these questions, but they are there, throbbing like an open wound in the official history. Interestingly, before the body was left on the cross for the usual time, which, let's remember, could be several days before visible decomposition began, an urgent request arose to remove it, and quickly. Joseph of Arimathea, described as a rich and influential man, went to Pilate and requested permission to remove Jesus' body before nightfall. The question no one asks is, why? If Jesus were truly dead, why the rush? Ordinary burials of crucified men did not receive dignified treatment. The bodies were left to rot on the cross as a warning or thrown into mass graves. There was no urgency, there was no ceremony. But here the removal is hurried, coordinated, authorized without resistance, and Pilate, curiously, doesn't even question it. He simply allows it, as if he already knew, as if it had been part of the plan from the beginning. This sudden move reveals a scenario that looks more like a strategic rescue than a traditional funeral. Furthermore, the request was made even before there was official confirmation of the death. Pilate was surprised to learn that Jesus had already died, so much so that he summoned the centurion to confirm, but even so, he authorized the immediate removal. There was no autopsy, there was no public verification, just a silent, almost complicit release, and then the body was taken away. Not to a public place, not to be mourned by the crowd, but to a private, secluded tomb, far from the eyes of the authorities. A tomb that belonged to a rich, influential, well-connected man. A tomb that looked more like a hiding place. In Roman crucifixion, there was a standard procedure to hasten death when necessary. The broken leg, the breaking of the legs. This brutal act prevented the condemned from using the nails in their feet to propel their body upwards and breathe. Without this movement, asphyxiation would occur within minutes. It was the most efficient way to ensure that the execution was completed quickly, especially when there was a rush, such as on the eve of a holy Sabbath, when bodies could not remain exposed. But strangely, this wasn't done to Jesus. The soldiers broke the legs of the two crucified men beside him, but when they came to Jesus, they simply didn't. The traditional justification is that he was already dead. But how could they be so sure? And why, then, did a soldier decide to pierce his side with a spear? If he was dead, what was the purpose of wounding him further? This exception is not merely symbolic, it is physiological. Without breaking the bones, the body would remain structurally capable of sustaining respiration, albeit weak. Intact legs signified potential mobility, capacity for recovery, and the possibility of survival. This opens the door to a bold and disturbing hypothesis. Perhaps there was no death to be accelerated. Perhaps what appeared to be death was merely profound unconsciousness, induced catalepsy, a liminal state between life and death, but still life. What if the soldiers, intentionally or not, preserved exactly what was necessary for Jesus to survive? Upon being wounded by the spear, the biblical text describes something striking: the flow of blood and water. This detail is repeated with emphasis, as if it were fundamental, and indeed it is, but not for the reasons we were taught. A dead body does not actively bleed. When the heart stops, circulation ceases. The blood begins to clot and accumulate in the lower parts of the body due to gravity, in a process called bruise of death. If Jesus' body had been dead for hours, as the narrative suggests, there should have been no blood flow. At most, a passive, dark dripping without pressure, without life. But the account describes something different. It describes flow. It describes blood followed by a clear liquid, possibly serum, plasma, or pericardial fluid. This type of physiological response points to active circulation, to a heart that was still functioning, albeit weakly. It points to life. Modern doctors who analyzed this description suggested that the clear fluid could indicate hemopericardium, an accumulation of fluid around the heart due to trauma or extreme stress. But this only occurs in living bodies. Dead bodies do not produce these responses. What came out of Jesus' side, therefore, was not the sign of a confirmed death. It was the biological evidence of a body still fighting, still alive, still resisting. This detail is often interpreted as a mystical sign, a prophetic fulfillment. But physiologically, medically, objectively, it indicates the opposite. The heart could still have been functioning. A simple detail, forgotten in homilies, ignored in sermons, but devastating to the official narrative we know. Instead of a public, communal and commonplace, as one might expect for someone executed as a criminal, Jesus is taken to a new, isolated, spacious, and carefully protected tomb. This tomb belonged to Joseph of Arimathea, a man described as rich, influential, and interestingly, as someone who awaited the kingdom of God, that is, someone aligned with Jesus' message, not with his executioners. There was no body prepared for prolonged decomposition. There were no full funeral rites that would take days. There was no final anointing with heavy, permanent spices. What there was haste, discretion, and isolation. The scene looks much more like an emergency recovery room than a final tomb. The stone that seals the entrance is not just a religious symbol, it's perfect isolation. Protection from outside eyes, a controlled, cool, dark, silent environment, exactly the kind of place where someone seriously injured, in critical condition, could be safely kept while recovering, or while being treated. Furthermore, ointments, myrrh, and aloe are mentioned, substances known not only for their funerary uses, but also for their medicinal properties, anti-inflammatory, healing, and analgesic. Why apply remedies to a corpse? Why this quantity, this urgency, this care for someone who supposedly no longer felt anything? All of this paints a picture that defies the logic of death. And it suggests something far more tangible, a rescue plan, a carefully orchestrated operation, a temporary refuge disguised as a grave. 3 days later, the body is no longer there. The stones have been removed. The grave is empty. And there are no signs of violation, theft, struggle, or mutilation, just absence, silence, and panic among those who expected to find a corpse. The traditional explanation is supernatural resurrection. The body was transformed, elevated, transfigured. But what if we look at this event in a different light? What if, instead of a literal miracle, this disappearance was the final stage of a meticulously executed plan from the beginning? If Jesus had never actually died, then the disappearance would cease to be inexplicable. It would become logical. It would be part of a larger strategy to physically disappear from the reach of the Roman and Jewish authorities, who were still searching for him, who were still fearing him, who still saw in him a political and spiritual threat capable of setting the entire region ablaze. Emerging from that tomb alive, recovered enough to walk, meant continuing the mission. It meant moving to other lands, other communities, other peoples. It meant transforming from a martyr into an itinerant teacher once more, only now, invisible to the eyes of the empire. There are historical theories, based on apocryphal texts and oral traditions from various cultures, that suggest Jesus was seen in distant regions, in India, Persia, Afghanistan. These traditions, though controversial, share something in common. They describe a wise man, healed of wounds, who taught about love, compassion, and justice. A man who did not die on the cross. A man who survived. Accounts following the crucifixion describe Jesus walking, talking, eating, drinking, touching, and being touched. He appears in houses, by lakes, on roads. He breaks bread. He bakes fish. He shows wounds. He breathes. This is not the behavior of an ethereal, translucent, immaterial spirit. It is the behavior of someone alive, with a physical body, a tangible presence, human needs. Thomas, the skeptical disciple, is invited to touch the wounds, and he touches them. He feels the flesh. He feels the marks. This is not described as a vision. It is described as a physical, concrete, sensory experience. If Jesus were only spirit, Why insist so much on physicality? Why eat? Why prove that the body was real? These appearances become even more intriguing when viewed from another perspective. What if the return was not supernatural, but simply human? What if Jesus was recovering, moving cautiously, appearing only to those he trusted, avoiding public exposure that would put him at risk again? He appears unexpectedly. He disappears quickly. He doesn't stay. He doesn't expose himself. He acts like someone who needs to remain hidden, like someone who knows his life is still in danger, like someone who is alive but needs to appear dead to the rest of the world. This interpretation completely transforms the meaning of the post-crucifixion appearances. They cease to be proof of divinity and become evidence of survival. And that, perhaps, is even more powerful. Are you keeping up with all of this? Is this story making you rethink what you've always believed? Then leave a like, share it with someone who needs to see this, and stick with me until the end, because there's more to come. If Jesus didn't die on the cross, then what was the true purpose of the crucifixion? And why would this alternative version have been hidden, erased, silenced throughout the centuries? Perhaps the message was never about sacrificial death, but about something much more human and profound: survival, resistance, the continuation of a mission that threatened the powerful of his time. Perhaps the cross wasn't the end for Jesus, but the beginning of an even bolder journey. A journey he had to make in silence, away from the spotlight, away from the empire, but close to those who truly needed him. If Jesus remained alive, then the entire narrative changes shape. Martyrdom becomes strategy, resurrection becomes recovery, and sacrifice becomes an act of unparalleled courage. Not the courage to die, but the courage to keep living when everyone expected you to disappear. The story didn't end at the cross. It began there. And perhaps, just perhaps, it has never been fully told. Until now. If this video sparked something in you, leave a comment. The truth needs to come out. Subscribe to the channel, activate the bell, and share this video with someone you know is ready to wake up now. And if you want the full continuation of this investigation, write in the comments. I want part 2. Because the story may have been written, but it hasn't been fully revealed yet. See you in the next video.